Dear Professor, hello, and I'm very glad to have you here and talk to you about some of your ideas. First of all, I would like to ask you about what is an atmosphere?
Well,
in your
the term of atmosphere is stemming from meteorology, and at first hand it was sort of a metaphor, because you know that the weather also causes a certain feeling within you. For example, a thunderstorm, you may become anxious or suppressed or so. And then, since the 18th century, the term of atmosphere was used for a room with a certain mood. So that when you get into a room, you have the affection to change your own feeling. So it's feeling, emotional feeling of the room you are staying in. This is the concept of atmosphere, but a very short definition is atmosphere is a tuned space.
But it doesn't refer only to closed spaces.
No, no, no. Also open spaces outside. For example, the very important examples for atmospheres are to be found in the aesthetics of nature. For example, a valley may be a joyful sight, for example, or again come to events of the weather. So the morning, the brightness, this gives you a certain feeling. And this is what we call the atmosphere of the morning. And there are also atmospheres of the seasons, the atmosphere of spring, of autumn. So therefore the term of atmospheres also applies to natural phenomena.
I think that you're writing at some point that when people are trying to design gardens, they're actually trying to control this feeling, these certain kind of moods, and there were certain kinds of gardens divided on different kinds of moods, and in order to for a garden to emanate a certain mood, you had to create a certain kind of a garden.
Yes,
and
that's
I wanted
true.
to ask you. I wanted to ask you where this kind of data came from. Was it a result of some kind of an observation, or was it some kind of a theory that came from somewhere? What did these prescriptions for garden design came from?
Well, I think it's neither observation nor theory. Actually, it's practice. Well, I relate my work in a sense to the series of making or designing English gardens. This is CCC Hirschfeld at the beginning of 19th century. He made a big volume, actually 5 volumes on English gardening, the park gardening. And well, he uses terms stemming from stage set. So I think in the background of the whole thinking about atmospheres and making atmospheres is the very old practice of stage setting. So he, for example, he is calling of natural scenes or characters. So a certain natural scene in a park gives you a certain feeling. And if you want to express what feeling it is, you're related to the character of the scene. For example, it may be serious, or it may be joyful, or it may be dull, for example. So, and if you enter the scene, you are affected by this quasi-objective feeling which is hanging around in the air, and your own body and your own feeling is affected by that, so that your own mood has a tendency to change. Or the other way around, you may have a certain feeling and you want to be in an environment which answers to your feeling. There's a certain resonance by the scene outside. For example, you are melancholic and you like to go into a natural scene in the park where you feel the melancholy from outside.
I see. And this is also true about humans as well. So humans,
Oh, yes.
Some kind of an actor. They look like actors that they also have to learn to project a certain kind of a mood. They can potentially.
Actually, yes, yeah. I think there are two aspects. One is that in a certain scene, those people hanging around or moving around are contributing to the atmosphere of the whole thing. And the other thing is that for personal communication between two persons, the persons, they are emanating atmosphere of their own. Well, traditionally, this was much more rooted into the physiognomy of a person. But actually, what is working is not that you, by the physiognomy of a person, you can have an idea of his character, but the physiognomy is emanating a certain atmosphere between the two persons in communication. So before, if you meet a person, before you utter the first word, you also are affected by a certain atmosphere which is floating between both of us.
Can it be learned, this kind of atmosphere, or this is an innate kind of thing, or that comes with development, personal development of each individual?
Well, I think this may have roots in your being natural, so maybe have root in the natural history of mankind, but also it will be learned through the atmosphere, say, of a family or to your parents. So it's part of our culture to have these atmospheres, and this also can be cultivated. So we are talking today. We are talking about staging yourself. You have a certain lifestyle, for example, yeah, and your clothing and the way of you speaking and the way you are looking. All this contributes to the atmosphere you are emanating. So I think this part of the whole thing can be learned and can be trained.
Okay. I was also wondering about the phenomenon of expectations. You know, if we are all actors, then at some point our expectations of others' atmosphere hit, you know, each other and contradict each other, and you know, we are trying to put into certain frames other humans or even nature all the time, and I was wondering if we are not the only ones who do this all the time. Maybe some other species also have some kind of an expectation from us humans.
Oh yes, I think so. Well, this may be a very important field of application of the concept of atmosphere, because it is much more fun. A type of communication which is much more fundamental as compared with verbal or communication through speech. So atmospheres are also noticed by animals. For example, the dogs, they are very sensitive on you. The atmosphere a certain person brings into the room, so they may get nervous when a certain person appears. So I think this very fundamental way of communication also it applies to the communication between us, human people, human beings, and other species. So I think this is very important, and it's also important in particular in our days, where we have to face a situation that we more and more must also be in communication with disabled people, very old people who in a sense are not full competent in verbal communication. The other type of communication, much more communication through feelings and atmospheres, still may be working, although those handicapped people are not in a situation where they can express themselves verbally.
I understand. You said in an interview that the majority of our contemporaries behave in a Cartesian kind of way by using drugs, therapeuticals, undergoing transplant and cosmetic surgery, by practicing bodybuilding. And I was wondering, however, if the encounter of wild nature in itself or of atmosphere-specific environments like specially designed parks, or even the encounter of site-specific art or ephemeral art, as you call it, aren't also therapeutical in some way, and therefore medical as well?
Well, I think so. I think the practice of atmosphere may also have a possible application in therapy. So, for example, in Germany, the hospitals of the so-called anthroposophes, they have a big emphasis on atmosphere, the atmosphere of the room, the painting, the geometry, things like that. And so they also apply in their therapy the cultural musical practices, painting and music and things like that, as a means of therapy. And here also the whole thing that you are living in a certain atmosphere or you experience an atmosphere may have a therapeutic efficiency.
Do you think the opposite is true as well, namely that blocked or reduced access to green spaces or to culture is actually damaging to the human individual?
Yes, I think so, particularly the color of green, but it's not, you know, it's not the color as such, but it's also the encounter with other species, for example, plants or animals. I mean, this belongs to the human history in our world, and we are nature of ourselves, and this feeling that we are belonging to nature, and our body is an organism and we are living beings. Well, this is, you know, is supported through the encounter with other species. So I think this is very important. And well, I mentioned before in the discussion that there is this very nice story of Herr Keuner with Bertolt Brecht, and here Herr Keuner, he is an inhabitant of a big city, and he says, when I come out of my door, I want to meet a tree. And this is because, you know, he says a tree is something in itself, growing itself, showing itself, and all the other things in the city are man-made. And also in all other situations, I finally meet myself as a human being. And therefore, I need something which is independent of our species.
In the essay about the importance of English garden, you write that today cosmos means that the whole of nature and the human being are deeply indifferent one to each other. That modern natural sciences taught us that in comparison to the vision of the ancient times, cosmos has not less but actually more regularities and order. But at the same time, these sciences separated the cosmos from the human so much that today it is difficult to open the discussion on the Kantian reference, starry sky above me and the moral law in me. But you don't say that it is impossible, though, to reopen this question. So how would you open this discussion?
Well, I think it's true that natural science in a sense is alienated science. So you have a science of nature out there, not of your own nature, you know, as you feel it. So nature is always the other in science. Therefore, it is true what you said, that the the cosmos out there is something separated from our being. And well, if you ask whether there is a way out or an alternative, I again emphasize that the fact that we are natural beings in ourselves. So, but how do we get a feeling of that, and how do we make use of it? For example, even use in a scientific way. Well, the first step is that you must be aware of being nature yourself, so have a feeling from inside. And this is very important because, you know, our body is the only place in the world where we feel what it is being an organism from inside, not observing it as something out there, but how do you feel being a human being or an organism? And I think from this point of departure, you may even develop an alternative science of nature. And I think we have reason here in this field to go back to Goethe, because when he makes natural science, he always he always links his own body to nature out there. For example, he says that colors is the law of nature as it is linked to the vision of our eye. So he introduces something bodily, the eye, into his concept of color. And this is quite different from natural science, because natural science finally is not related to the human body, but it is related to apparatus of measurement. So the data of natural science are not what you see or feel, but is what you can read on the apparatus. And so I think a natural science of the Goethean type may be a different science of nature, namely taking into account that we are part of nature.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking me. Yeah.